Excellent. So let's actually get started. So welcome everybody and welcome to the SharePoint Patterns and Practices community call. This is the November 2017 edition. I think this is actually pretty much the anniversary, two-year anniversary from the community calls when we actually started. So it's been quite a long ride on doing these community calls, and then we started doing special interest group calls on top of this and everything else. So it's been a long ride on the PnP side. So well, today we are calling directly from Dublin. So I'm here in the room with Paolo Pialorsi. So Paolo is going to do one demo today. Bert Janssen is going to do a quick demo today as well, directly coming from his session. So he's not yet here because his session ends in 15 minutes. So it's going to be pretty fresh when he's arriving here. So hopefully 15 quarter to the following hour. Bert has been arriving to the room and he can do his demo as well. Good. And by the way, happy birthday, Paul, because everybody is mentioning that on the Ion window as well. So typical monthly community call agenda. So we'll go through what has happened within the past month in the SharePoint dev ecosystem side, and then we go through the contributions and other topics, and then we'll concentrate on the demos. So we'll have again 3 demos in this monthly community call done by Frank Konu, Paolo Pialorsi, and Bert Janssen. Slightly different topics, and there's some new topics as well. So as an example, Bert is going to show today how the groupify operation happens for the classic theme sites, and that's pretty cool. And we're going to show the API functionality, which isn't yet available, but you'll get a preview on the upcoming capabilities. So you'll know what's coming, how it works, and you don't have to worry about what's happening. Like with other things, other community calls, this is getting recorded. The YouTube video will be available within our YouTube channel, typically within 24 hours. But let's actually get on going. So I'm trying to keep it short as typical, but quite often I talk way too long and I mess up the schedules for the demos. So first of all, a few metrics. October 2017, the growth on our material on the PnP guidance, on the PnP documentation is clearly visible. So we, for example, in YouTube, we had 146,000 minutes of watch time, which is pretty insane. Well, we do have more than 200 videos there around SharePoint framework and other customization topics in SharePoint. We had 32,000 average unique visitors in GitHub, and that's average number in 2 weeks because that's how GitHub is calculating its visitors. We had 420,000 views in docs.microsoft.com/SharePoint/dev, which is the location for all of our development guidance. So please do remember, if you're looking anything related on SharePoint development, docs.microsoft.com/SharePoint, and you'll find that from there. So all of the up-to-date relevant active documentation from MSDN has been now migrated into this location. We probably still have few locations where the redirections do not work properly, but all the modern add-in guidance, SharePoint framework guidance, and all the new stuff is getting released in the docs.microsoft.com/SharePoint. On the PnP side, we had 7,900 unique tenants using the PnP reusable components, more than 5 billion requests coming through in October. And then the most used capability, once again, is the provisioning engine. So people are using that quite heavily through PowerShell or through PnP CSOM extension. Good. Moving on things. So I can see that there's some audio challenges apparently with some people. Hopefully, if nothing else, you can follow up, or you can then follow up on the recording later. And please remember to mute yourself as well so there's no background noise. Thanks, Dean. It does absolutely always helps if you plug in the headphones. That's a fair point. Now, on the October timeframe, or before after the previous monthly summary, we have released now 4 new webcasts, which were all around deployment options on SharePoint framework. So we explained the tenant scope deployment option. What does it mean in practice as a webcast? Custom themes with modern SharePoint sites. So a minimal level of branding on the modern SharePoint sites. That's going to be growing in the future, but we go through the current setup of what is supported from a custom themes perspective. Working with tenant properties, that's related on SharePoint framework or adding development, and also how to define an icon for client-side web part, which went live on this Monday. We also released 2 guidance videos, so both related on SharePoint framework. So debugging SharePoint framework solution in Visual Studio Code. I think that's like 8 minutes explaining how to do an F5 in Visual Studio Code, and then also using a serve.json to make SharePoint Framework extension development easier. So if you're doing SharePoint Framework extension development, you probably want to have a look on that one, because it's a new capability available starting from 1.3.4 version of SharePoint Framework, which is the previous version, which has been going live from the human template version perspective. Now, moving on things. So the most viewed samples. So the most viewed samples have remained pretty much the same since the last months. So there's some samples where we can clearly see that people, because you can tweak our metric system, how we calculate the views for samples, so people can actually take advantage of this, and we can see that from some of the metrics. But the GPR's Activity Hub has been a #1 for past months, and that is a really nice starter kit. First of all, showing how to do end-to-end solutions in SharePoint Online using modern experiences and to deploy those using the BMP provisioning. And it also actually is a nice business case. So how do you use SharePoint to collect the needed information around potential GDPR violations? Well, it's not a GDPR violation. It's what violation is it? Paolo, help me. It's not a GDPR violation which is getting collected. It's
the events and the requests for accessing or updating data of data subject. Cool.
But it's a great business case, and shows how to make that happen. And it is a starting kit and free to use. The BMP Site Score, CSM extension, typically #2 as well. SharePoint UI responsive, going slightly down. That's as expected as well, because it's not really meant to be used with modern experiences. So we'll hopefully see that one slightly going down in the future as well. Search query tool from Mikael Svensson, as expected. Then there's few SharePoint Framework examples. So those are quite often pretty high. I think in the case of SPFX React Mega Menu, this is a spoofed metric, unfortunately, but it is a good sample as well. So there's something happened, and that sample is really high due to entries of a single day. BMP score, a few other samples. MIMSync, super high from Spencer Harper. Spencer is coordinating that work as well. But we can see a relatively nice trend on more and more SharePoint Framework capabilities are getting used and viewed from a GitHub. And then obviously the branding elements and classic branding is quite often in the list as well, or how to do JavaScript customizations in SharePoint Framework. Now, on the SharePoint, let's say BMP perspective, we do have this slide in every single monthly call. For those who know what we're going to talk about in here, I do apologize. But for those who haven't seen this before, the key point of this one is to explain what the SharePoint BMP or SharePoint development ecosystem is all about. So we have multiple layers which you can select how you want to be involved within the SharePoint BMP. Obviously, if you need support, if you need help, please use the SharePoint developer group at Microsoft Tech Community. Is probably URL to remember is AKMS SPBMP Community. And that's where essentially you can ask questions, you can and get answers from the other ones in the community. It's relatively active from the getting the answers as well. And you can always CC other people. I'm getting CC'd though on quite a few questions, so I'm kind of running out of time on answering every one of them, and I do apologize on that. The second option is our bi-weekly special interest group call. So if you're interested in doing SharePoint Framework, we do have a bi-weekly special interest group call where we go through always the latest and greatest on SharePoint Framework. So the latest news, roadmap, preview demos and upcoming capabilities, so all of that cool stuff related on the new ways of customizing SharePoint. The next one for that is on 23rd of November, so the Thursday, and that's 7 a.m. Pacific time, but then, and we know that it's wrong time for Pacific, but it's more aligned for other people. I've been trying to promote a single time zone across the world approach for years, but people are not quite catching that. And that was a joke. Now, the second bi-weekly special interest group call is around the SharePoint development, CSM development, PowerShell development, BMP JS Core, and all of that. So this one is more where we explain provisioning stuff, more general development topics. And again, bi-weekly meeting typically shows something new stuff and new capabilities. On this one, we would have the special interest group call on this Thursday for the general SharePoint development, but that has been now cancelled due to the fact that every single BMP core team member is actually in the plane or in the airport during the call time, so we can't, or they're in parental leave, so we can't actually, anyway, we just can't do the call. So we do apologize on that one. So the next special interest group call is for a week from here, Thursday, for around SharePoint framework. And then we have these monthly community calls where we walk through all of the latest what has happened within the last month from a SharePoint development guidance perspective. So up to you how often you want to join, how closely you want to be involved, and how do you want to follow what's actually happening. But it's a choice which you can make depending on your availability. Now, looking in more details, what has happened within October. So one of the big things what we went or released in October was the SharePoint column formatting, and there's an extra S unfortunately on the slide. Don't worry about that one. It's not a columns formatting, it's column formatting. But this is around the capability on being able to define how to render field values in a list or in a field using a JSON specific definition. Super cool capability, a lot of interest clearly from a so-called citizen developers. And we started already this open source initiative of collecting JSON definitions which other people can then use within their deployments as well. So we do have a GitHub repository at github.com/sharepoint/sbdev::formatting, where you can actually do your contributions, or you can consume those JavaScript files or JSON files from there and test how the functionality actually works. This one is in first review. So if you are first release tenant, so if you are in first release tenant, this should be now available for you to take advantage or test things out. Now, what else has happened in the November within the last month? So there was 3 or 4 new web parts getting released. So one of these is the React Text Box CO, which Frank is going to show after I do my quick summary. There was other nice examples as well, like React Project Online, showing how to consume Project Online REST APIs from client-side web parts, or React Webhook Real-Time. Great example, which was actually demoed in last week's special interest group call. So if you're interested in seeing that live, we have a recording available in our YouTube channel. There was also quite a few extensions, so extensions are clearly getting traction as well. An application customizer seems to be the most interesting one, at least from a contribution perspective. But there's few new application customizers from Paolo Bielorussi, which we used for within the Ignite demos as an example. Then a nice application webhooks notification that was also demoed in last Thursday's special interest group call. React Mega Menu, React Command Discuss Now, that from Paolo. React Mega Menu was from I'm forgetting the name. Was from that was demoed last week as well, and JS command item permissions from Alex. So good stuff, and you can easily have a look on how these things work, pull them down from GitHub, learn how to do development of SharePoint framework, and learn how to do this kind of stuff by yourself. But thank you everybody for these contributions. On other areas, we did have a new sample around, or solution sample around governance ensure policy. This is actually a real-life sample which we built for our close enterprise, really high-end enterprise customers around how to replace grant web app policies with SharePoint Online competitive options. And Bert did that for his day-to-day project. Reusable controls, a lot of development in there, which is a really good thing because we want to build a set of reusable controls that people can use. And we, from engineering side, we actually do review this so that they should be following up on the right practices and they're properly implemented. Guidance videos, few news videos available there as well. And again, being super conscious about the time because I always talk too much. On the core and engine update sides, so we do have now in this release, so we do have some capabilities which are not yet available within the SharePoint Online. And this is something slightly new, which we have started doing with SharePoint BMP. So one of the things on the core CSM and engine side is the ALM methods. So we do have now CSM extension methods available to get add-ins and SharePoint Framework solution deployed from the app catalog to the individual site. Now, we do need to be specific on the status of that one. That functionality has been announced, but it's not has been yet released. But we in the PnP team, because we have access on early things capabilities, we've been able to provide this one available. So whenever the first release starts, then you can start using these ALMs within your tenant as well. And there's also a PowerShell commandlets for those capabilities, which, by the way, will be also demoed in the ESPC as well. There's also a lot of other improvements and quality adjustments on the area. One of the key points may be mentioned on the PowerShell side. There's a now capability of storing your multiple connections within your script. So you can actually have one script where you don't always have to do connect BMP online multiple times and flip the context. You can actually store a connection object and flip the connection which you use dynamically within your script, and super cool capability in the PowerShell side. We do not have a demo on that one today, but if you're into the PowerShell, you'll probably get how that actually works, and we'll make sure that the documentation is up to date on that one. Small nuance on that one, the PnP PowerShell documentation is going to be landing right next to SharePoint Online PowerShell and SharePoint PowerShell documentation to docs.microsoft.com any day now. So we'll have a new documentation platform for that stuff as well coming pretty soon. A lot of new stuff actually happening, quite a lot. Now, a lot of comments, obviously, on the multiple connections support. Yes, I absolutely agree on that. Now, thank you humongously once again for your contribution. We did have more than 40 people, 30 people contributing again on this month. There was pull requests, which we unfortunately just ran out of time to process. We are trying to focus on getting those things processed in the future in a more timely manner. It's been a super busy month right after Ignite and then ESPC and all of the new stuff that we've been building. So we do apologize for missing some of the pull requests, trying to get them absolutely included in the December release. But thank you for your contribution. Absolutely appreciate it. The community helping community is really the key how we can scale the SharePoint development as well. And then we can all be more successful on what we do. On the company side, we got these are the big companies which we got a permission to show their logos. If your name was mentioned on the previous slide with your company, you can send me a permission and the company logo as an email, and we'll get it updated on the monthly communications and on these things. But once again, quite a big amount of companies who are actually giving their employees the opportunity and time to contribute on open source and making other people successful also in the community. So thank you on behalf of Microsoft for these companies for giving that option as well. And also in Microsoft side, we had quite a few actually additional people, new people, internal community people participating. There's Kirsten Craze as an example, a new person. There's a lot of technical writers now who are helping us on the journey of getting stuff updated and polished as well. And quite a few engineers who've helped with some of the documentation. So just and also big thanks for the Microsoft people who've been closely involved. Now, I don't want to steal any more time on quicks. That was a super quick summary. If you're interested in a more detailed summary, you can absolutely go to the docs.microsoft.com/blogs. So if you go to docs. Oops, I'm going to give you the URL in a second. There we go. So if you're interested in all of the updates, what has happened, in the monthly communication level and on the monthly side from a guidance and example perspective, please have a look on that written document or written document blog post in the dev.ops.com/blogs. Just to quickly address, Frank Cornu would be the first one who's actually going to start presenting. They're doing a quick demo. So Frank, feel free to start sharing, and I'm going to read Timothy's comment. So, Timothy, first time attending these sessions, where does one go to suggest features to be included in future CUs? That is actually an awesome question. Now, for the CUs, which are for on-premises cumulative versions, the best possible place would be tech community and SharePoint group, because again, that's managed by the on-premises people, and that would be most likely found. You would be able to find the right people from an engineering perspective. And Dean has a good question. Oh, Frank, by the way, can you stop?
Yep. Thank you, Vesa. Okay.
And I'm going to just address Dean's question. So on the sample list of things, so that's one thing what we are working. So the whole devdevelopers.com will be updated, and there should be an automatic code sample catalog, which we're now working on. And so we haven't actually done updates since February 2017, because with full transparency, the new catalog and the platform should have been up and running by April. Now it's November, so we've been kind of missing quite a few months. But I do understand that we should actually get the list of samples up to date, and we'll spend time on that one in upcoming weeks to make that happen. So all good for that. Good feedback, team. Good, Frank.
Yeah, thank you, Vesa. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, I can see your screen. Just take it away, and let's start from there.
Okay, thank you. So, hi everybody. So my name is Frank Cornu. I'm a senior consultant founder at Ecos, based in Montreal, Canada. And today I will show you a sample I've made a couple of days ago about rich text content editing in SharePoint Modern Pages. So first I will talk about the requirements, because this sample comes from a real project. It is a real requirement from one of my customers. So the requirement was to provide a rich content editor within the SharePoint Modern Pages, because when you talk about content editing in those pages, basically what you have to do, I will show you. I will take the example of a communication site. If you want to create a dynamic experience and add some rich content, you have some capabilities in these pages. So you have a default editor within SharePoint, which is very basic. And if you want to make a great experience, you will have to do. You have to create your own layout by adding multiple text here and also here. And for instance, if you want to add images, you will have to add different web parts within your page. So it can be very fastidious and long. It can be a long operation for users to create their pages. So the goal here was to provide a single web part when you can do all these things, let's say add images, add tables, and so on within your pages. So the web part is here. So I will just. So the web part is pretty simple. This is an integration of a third-party tool called Textbox.io, which is a third-party editor from a publisher. And with this control, we are able to create rich text content within Modern Pages. So by default, it provides a lot of options. For example, indentation, bullet point, and so on. Headings, you can integrate your own styles within this web part. You can also integrate images within the same web part, so you don't have to create a special layout to integrate your images. You have also a resize feature. You can play with the content very easily. You can also add tables. So those features are not provided by default by the default SharePoint editor. So it can be annoying for users if they want to create rich content. So this editor. I integrated this editor through an SPFX web part, but I had the choice to use many editors on the market. I chose the Textbox.io one for some reason. My first choice was to use the CK editor, but I ran into an issue with the default SharePoint editor. If you look at this editor, behind the scenes, it uses the CK editor. I can show you just by going into the DOM. And if you look here, you will see the CK editor is here. So here you can see this is the default toolbar of the SharePoint web part, but what you can see here is not the toolbar of the CK editor widget, the default one. It's hidden by default. So if you plan to use the CK editor web part in combination of the default SharePoint web part, you will have some issue and the toolbar won't show up. So that's why I couldn't use this editor. So that's why I chose Textbox.io. So Textbox.io integrates very nicely with the SharePoint UI, as you can see. It is very light, and it provides much more feature than the default SharePoint editor. So I will just go through the solution. So how I did this sample. So I go to the Visual Studio Code. So this web part is developed using React and SPXFix. So the use of this library. So I will show you here side by side. The use of this library is pretty easy. All you have to do is first of all is to integrate the library into your solution, because the Textbox.io doesn't provide a CDN or something like that. So you will have to download the library from the website, from the publisher website, and integrate directly in your solution. Then to use this library in your SharePoint file, in your TypeScript file, you will have to create a TypeScript definition file, just to make sure TypeScript can recognize this library, and then import in your TypeScript file. And then to create the editor itself, it's pretty simple. All you have to do is to create a div element, an HTML div element, and specify a unique ID. In this case, it is a random grid generated dynamically. And then, you give control. Okay. And then you have to call this method with your default config. So the beauty of this editor is you can configure the toolbar very easily. So you can choose what features users can use in the editor. In these examples, I just restrict on this feature, but you can customize according to your requirements all the features you need for your user. For example, you can add tables, images, videos, and so on. And you can also provide your own style. So if I make this style, if I write this style H1 here, the H1 here will be my style from the global window. So it is very customizable in this way. You can also add listeners to catch the content. For example, when the content is changed, you can trigger some events. I will show you later the use of this feature. So as you can see, the use of this library is very simple. What is the next point is the integration of this library within SPXFix. By default, the Textbox.io library comes with a static structure with folders and so on. So, for instance, the Textbox.io.js file needs the resources folder at runtime. This is a prerequisite. So to get it work, you will have to do some configuration within Webpack and Gulp to do this. So if I jump to the Gulp file here, what I've done is first I exclude hash from file names because by default when you generate your bundle with Webpack, the file name will come with a hash at the end, especially for caching purpose. But in the case of Textbox.io.js, we can't use this mechanism because the library expects that the file name will be exactly this name. So that's why I exclude this the hash from the file name. This configuration applies to all files, and you can't specify a specific file from to exclude the hash. So you have to be very careful with this parameter. And then the next things to do is to copy the static resource folder in your output. So be careful here, because depending on your configuration, if you are on development or in production, we have two output folders by default. You can change this folder, but by default it comes with two output folders. So if you specify the ship parameters in your gulp command, you will have the temp folder, and in development it's this folder. For example, if I go here and I say bundle ship, by this way, this configuration, I will show you the inputs. Okay. So the input will be the file name without hash, and the resources folder copied in the output. And you will see the hash are removed from file name. So if you plan to use this web port in your solution, I don't suggest you to I suggest you to not include this web port within your bundle, for especially for this reason, because of this parameter, if you plan to rely on the default caching mechanism. So this is a little trick to integrate this library. And the next thing I will talk about is the content crawling, because when you talk about when you talk about content, you could talk also about content rollup and search. And your content have to appear in search result, let's say for a summary or something like that. To make your content visible by the search engine, you will have to configure the web part accordingly. So if I go here in the web part file, you will see this method, properties metadata. This method aims to provide to the search engine the information of your content. For instance, I created a content property here, so this is an inner property. So it doesn't appear in the property pane, and I will say this is an HTML string. So by this way, the SharePoint search engine will be able to crawl the content of my web part, and the content will be visible in search result. By default, the content is retrievable by the description managed property in your search schema. So this is the default managed property for the content within your web path. So you have to know this managed property. So this is the configuration you have to do to configure it with the search engine. Another things I didn't mention. I did not mention in this web part. One of my requirements was to support the copy paste behavior from Microsoft Word. So if I just take the example of the default SharePoint editor. If I take the content of a Microsoft Word document, by the way, this is a very common requirement to create for users to import their content within a portal or an intranet. So if I pass the content in the default SharePoint editor, you will see, for instance, the titles, the H1, H2, and so on are not replicated in my web part because it doesn't support yet this functionality. But if I copy this exact same content within the Textbox IO editor, it will prompt me if I want to remove the formatting, like the SharePoint editor do, or keep the formatting. If I choose keep formatting, you will see the H1, links, and so on will be kept. So it can be a very valuable feature for your users to create content very quickly. They don't have to add multiple text web parts like this and create their own layout. They just have to put this web part and copy paste from their Word document. So it can be a very valuable feature. And that's pretty it. You can just then configure your own, configure the editor with your own configuration and according to your requirement. Another thing that I didn't mention, if you want to compare other editors like Textbox.io, CK Editor, and so on, I've made in my blog a comparison of all available, the most popular editors within the market. So if you want to try this editor, feel free to do it. So that's pretty it for me. Thank you very much for listening.
Thanks, Frank. Really great demo and really great web part as well. Because this is a typically required. There's a lot of people who would be asking this kind of a capability. But now I think it's time to flip to Paolo. So thank you, Frank, for that one. Let's flip to Paolo. Paolo is sitting on the same room, so we'll keep the lines open and you can share your screen directly from the computer. It's still loading for me. I got it. So
okay. So hello everybody. Now we will talk about how to migrate a very commonly used tool like a JS Link extension for list view in the classic UI of SharePoint into the modern UI using the field customizer of the SharePoint framework extension. So let's start with the classic UI. Here you can see in my browser I have a classic view of a list in which I have a few items with a color column in which I decided to customize the rendering of the color field using a colored box instead of the name of the color. This functionality was available and still available in the classic UI of SharePoint simply using the JS Link property of the list view control, for example. So if I edit my page, that's to set the context, and if I edit the properties of the list view web part, you can see that in the miscellaneous area you have the JS Link property, and I'm targeting a JavaScript file which I have in the site assets library of my site. Well, if I go to Visual Studio Code, we can see that the JS Link, the JS file that I'm loading through the JS Link property simply defines a namespace in JavaScript. Then by using a custom function defining that namespace, declares a new object which will define a template for rendering custom fields, and it will target a color field, and in particular it will target the view of that color field using a custom render color field function. Within the registration method, I will also tell to the rendering engine of SharePoint in the classic UI to register my overridings, and then I will be able in my render color field method to say, okay, give me the color of the current item, the currently selected value, and based on the value of the field, let's define which will be the color that I will use through a color variable to render a div HTML element with a specific color, which will be the one I selected, and giving me as the output the nice box with the color we selected. That's all from a JS Link perspective. And if you want to use such kind of functionality, for example, you can eventually even consider using a PnP provisioning template through which you can do the provisioning of a list instance, and you can configure at the view level the JS Link property, as well as you can upload the JS file using the files collection of files you can upload using the PnP provisioning engine. So this was a common way of customizing the UI of fields in the classic UI. However, if I go back to this list, I stop editing the page, and I switch to the modern UI, so I exit the classic experience, you will see that by exiting the classic experience, and hopefully it will exit. Okay, let's see, here we are. Now we don't have anymore this capability because in the modern UI, the JS link is not available anymore. So we need something else to get the same result, to have the same result from an end user perspective. And the same result will be the one I will show you right now. If I switch to a modern site in which I still have a list of custom items with a color field, and here I have the same rendering as before, but in the modern UI. In order to achieve this result, you will need to create a SharePoint framework extension. So first of all, just to give you a few pointers, let's say you want to create a new project, you will use the Yeoman generator. So you will say Yeoman at Microsoft/SharePoint. You will start the Yeoman generator to create a new SharePoint framework project. Of course, the name could be the name of my folder. I will target SharePoint Online in order to have the SharePoint framework extensions available. I will use the same folder in which I am, and I will make this solution available only at site collection level. I am not going to use the tenant-wide deployment. Once you have done that, you can select to create an extension, and the extension will be a field customizer extension. I'm not going to create right now the full scaffolding of the project because I already have one, but this was just to give you a pointer and a few hints about how to create such kind of scaffolding. Once you have the project ready, you will be in a situation like the one I'm going to show you. So here I have a folder in which I have a project, which is a SharePoint framework extension, and under the source folder, here you can see we have a TypeScript file which has been generated by the Yeoman generator using exactly the same technique as before. And here I have a field customizer type from a TypeScript perspective, which inherits from a base field customizer, which will have some custom properties if needed. And in the onRenderCell method, which is a method that we can override in any field customizer, we simply define what will be the new behavior, the new rendering behavior for our custom color field. Now, I want to stress the information that because we are using TypeScript to create SharePoint framework solutions, in TypeScript we can use JavaScript code as well. And in fact, in this onRenderCell method overriding, I simply copied and pasted the content, the JavaScript content, of the render color field function that I had in my JS link. So basically, as long as you create the new scaffolding using the Yeoman generator, it is really, really easy to reproduce the same UI and the same customization using SharePoint Framework, because you will simply need to copy and paste the JavaScript code that you had in your JS link file. In fact, just double checking, as you can see here, we have exactly the same behavior as before. The only difference, let me say, is that in order to get the value of the field, we need to read the field value property of the event object that we get as an input argument for our onRenderCell method. This is the only difference, which is really easy to keep in account. So by doing that, you can have a field customizer which will behave as a JS link in the classic UI. However, we are in SharePoint Framework, and so maybe you want to simply do that. You are okay with reusing your JavaScript code and nothing more than that. Maybe you want to improve the overall quality of your solution, and you want to use TypeScript to have a fully typed approach to your solution. That's what you can do if you, instead of simply reusing the JavaScript code, you, for example, use a full TypeScript-based solution. So here is another field customizer, almost like the previous one, but this time in the onRenderCell method overriding, I still get the field value from the event input argument, but I play with some styles which I define in an SCSS file of my Visual Studio Code solution, in which I have the style for the cell, plus a bunch of styles for all of the different colors that I want to support with my field customizer. And so in the field customizer on render cell method implementation, I can simply say, okay, give me a pointer to the document object model element which represents my field output in the list view, and add to that one the class which corresponds to the box, to the field class. And as you can see, I have a full access to an IntelliSense approach to select my styles, because I'm in a fully typed context using TypeScript and the SCSS capabilities. Moreover, I get a reference to the first child of that element, which will be the div HTML div element, which will represent the content of my field in the list view. And I can add the style to that element, as well as the specific style for the color I want to render based on the color value of my field. By doing that, I will have a much more accurate solution, because I will have a fully typed approach, I will have IntelliSense, and I will be able to do proper testing of my code. So what you see right now here is the result of the TypeScript file that you just saw in my Visual Studio Code. Moreover, from a field customizer perspective, in order to provision, to deploy such kind of solution, you will also need to have, for example, a feature element file through which you will be able to declare a field. Use this custom field customizer for the rendering of the field value. Aside from that, it's pretty easy, as you saw, to migrate your already existing code to the new modern experience and to the new modern development with the SharePoint framework. I think that's all on my side, Visa. So we still have 15 minutes for Bert.
Thank you, Paolo.
And I'm Bert's start sharing and moving on to there. So what's your thinking on the transformation of the thing? So in general, we are working on now on example tutorials on JSLink and user custom actions and a what was the third one?
ECP menu.
ECP menu. Yes. So, but is it hard? Is it easy? Kind of your opinions, such from a discussion perspective as well.
My opinion is that it's not that hard, because, as I said, you can reuse the JavaScript code, most of the JavaScript code that you wrote. So at least in the first stage, you can reuse your code. And then you can improve it if you want to have a long time return of investment, or you can just keep the JavaScript code and keep on going with that one.
And one thing what we was discussing in the Iron window related on this one, you did show that, but let's be super specific on this one, because somebody asked that, okay, if I create a field customizer, does it work now in the classic experience? The answer is no. The SharePoint framework extensions are for modern experiences, and then the JSLink user custom action ECP menu is for the classic experience. But it's not dependent on a site type. It's dependent on the experience. So you can actually have a modern theme site, and you can still flip on the classic experience. And in the classic experience, you can still use user custom actions and JSLink.
Yeah.
So, well, that's pretty weird setup, but that could actually happen. So it is around the modern experiences and which approach you can actually take from an implementation perspective.
Yeah, it's about modern versus classic experience rather than modern site or classic site. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So experience counts, not the site type, or is it a communication site or a classic theme site? Absolutely. Cool. I think we'll jump on Bert. This is, to be honest, for those who are listening, I have to say that this is the first time probably ever four of us are sitting in the same room doing this live, and this is super weird because typically everybody is sitting at their home across the world, and we're throwing the ball.
And you say four? You say four because there is Erwin too here.
Yeah, Erwin is in the room as well. But anyway, so Bert, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Vesa. So I'm going to talk a bit about Groupify. Now, first of all, what is Groupify? So Groupify is an internal name for now, so don't start imagining strange things. It's an internal working name. Essentially, it is technology that we're building that allows you to connect an Office 365 group to your existing classic SharePoint theme sites. And the reason why you want to do that is because a group connected site does enable that SharePoint site for all the group services, so like Teams or Yammer. So what happens? You create a team site, you connect a 365 group to it, and that does give you all the goodness of having a mailbox for that site, creating a team for that site. So you don't have to start from scratch want to use Teams, because some people think like Teams is great, let's use Teams, but I need to copy my content from the old SharePoint site to my new SharePoint site. No, in this case, old SharePoint team site, add a group to it, and connect the teams to it, for example. So, great feature. Now, let's see how we can actually, how it works. And right, this is early 2018 in preview, in the first release, so it's GA, not yet determined, but somewhere next year, I would say. Okay, so what I'm going to do in the demo is first of all show the UI experience and how does it work as an end user. And you can argue, should an end user be able to do this or not? And there will be some controls where you can change the behavior, but today in this demo environment, in this edoc environment, it is like this. So click on the site actions and you have a menu called Connect to New Office 365 Group. When you click on that, you get a wizard style where you can run through, which will walk you through the necessary steps. So first step is defining the group name, the group alias. So because we're going to create an Office 365 group underneath, this group does require an alias. So groupify me gives the alias groupify me, very simple. You can have a site address which then is using groupify me. So the site address in this case is your existing site, because we're starting from an existing site. We're not creating a new site. That's important. Description, optionally, then a privacy setting. By default, it will be private. However, if we detect you using the old user's claim somewhere in your current site, then we'll flip it to a public site. But you will have some options to kind of control this behavior as well in the future. So, as said, this is still a preview technology. So let's see. Let's connect the group. It's creating the group. And if I would have had additional owners and members in the site, they would have been added to the group. When I click Finish, what happens is that, boom, there's a new homepage for this classic team site. So as part of the Groupify run, we're not just going to connect an Office 365 group to the classic team site, we're also going to add a new homepage. Currently, you get the stock modern team site homepage, I would say, but we'll have an option for you to upfront. Well, you can, as a developer, as a user, you can create a custom homepage, custom modern homepage upfront. Once you have that set, and you run the Groupify action, there will be an option to keep that existing modern homepage as part of the Groupify operation. This all works great. Now, I'm a company, I'm having 10,000s of classic team sites. Do I want my end users to click through these steps? Do I want them to pick the alias? Maybe I want to have certain structure in how I name the aliases. I want to do this in one big shot. So, can I automate this? That's the question. And the answer is yes, you can automate, because we have an API call for doing that. So let's do that.
Actually, before you go there, one question. Paul had a question, good question related on the groupification. So what about security groups? Because it did show that in the ESP, but now you kind of skipped that. So it is a super valid question. So what's going to happen with the security groups?
Yeah, very good question actually. So the classic team site, you have the members and the owners SharePoint groups. There are people in there. What will happen is that we will take those people listed in those SharePoint groups and we'll add them as members and owners of the created Office 365 group.
Yeah.
There are certain edge cases where you have a group inside a group, which is something Office 365 groups does not yet support. So those are not added at this point.
Yep.
And that's one of the reasons, and kind of doing a little detour, is that we are working on giving additional guidance and scanning technology for you as a customer, that you can say, like, you can run a scan on your environment, listing you all the sites which are easy to groupify, which are ready for groupify, and listing the ones which might require some more work from you, because, for example, we have a complex permission model, that doesn't really translate to the group model, and so
exactly.
you might have to fix certain things.
So Dean is also having a specific question, a follow-up on that one, is that what happens with the site collection admins? But those are going to be owners.
Yes, those will be owners.
Yes, and then basically members are going to be members, and visitors are probably going to be...
Well, there is no visitor concept in
that's
group,
true.
so that stays. So groups is the permissions on a group are used together with the SharePoint site permissions. So meaning in the end, if you look, the group members is just a claim in the SharePoint members group. Group owners is a claim in the SharePoint owners group. So it's just a way to extend the SharePoint permission model in this case.
Yeah. And there's a lot of questions obviously on this, and there's a lot of technical details on this one, but I think let's wait for the official documentation come there, because there's no point from doing blocking or any announcements around, hey, this is exactly how it works. We'll get that sorted out.
Yes, this is really early.
This is super early.
Review,
this API barely worked a few weeks ago, so or yesterday or the day before.
Yeah, so something like that.
So pretty early. So, but it's good to know what's coming and what's going to be available.
Right. Let's do a quick run of the API just so you guys see it in action. So I have a classic team site, and I'm gonna run a sample console application, which is calling the REST endpoint. Let's run. Okay. I should start giving my accounts easier passwords that I can just remember. Security first, indeed. Here we go. Okay. The API that we have, and this API actually is already in PnP site score, so I'm using just
which is kind of weird. The capability hasn't been yet released, but the API is already implemented in PnP site score.
We have it in PnP site score.
So fast.
Yes.
Faster than our shadow.
Faster than lightning.
So what are the key information that you have to specify? Is the alias, of course, but also display name. So there's a mandatory field that you have to specify. Easiest is just take the title of the existing site, and it's the most logical.
Yeah.
And then there's public, true or false, and potentially a description if you want. So we're going to press F5. It will end up in this groupify site async method, which is available in PnP site score as well. So it's the same code in PnP and in this one. What's important is this thing: is we call the groupify endpoint, which is group site manager / create group for site. You have to invoke that REST call on the classic site. So you connect to your classic team site and then invoke this endpoint. Then you kind of build up the JSON payload for the post requests. So this one name alias, just kind of wrapping them up. So this is a post request. Also need a bearer token. A digest. Request digest being added. Then we can hit the actual API. Now it goes out to SharePoint and say, groupify this classic team site. I get a status code back of true, so everything went well. The information you get back is kind of similar to the information you get from when you create a model in a team site, essentially. Similar structure. Let's see if we can do a response string. A little bigger. Like this. So you get a JSON structure back telling you the group ID, so there's a new group created with this ID, site status equal to, so the site has been created successfully, and the URL of the site, which was the site that you started from. This doesn't change. So we keep the same site, of course. That's the whole point of groupify.
That was one of the questions actually in our window. So it copied all of the content of the site. No. It's the same site.
It's the same site.
Which is great. The group in Azure AD and all of the other assets and associate. Well, basically we create a group and then we associate this site for that group as the SharePoint site, plus the other assets and everything else.
So you see here, this was the original site. I loaded this site before running the demo. I didn't refresh yet. So if I now hit Control F5. I hope to get something, and the same thing than before. I have to hit.
So you're reloading the home ASPX.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, and there's a question for Russell. It is still based on STS #0 underneath, so the template will still remain the same. Technically, it doesn't matter because the experience, what people are seeing, still is exactly the same as with the modern theme sites. And again, it's the modern experiences, classic experiences. It's not really around the template type. The template type doesn't
really matter much anymore in the future.
Yes, exactly.
Around, do you have a group connected, yes or no? And am I using modern UI experiences, modern pages, modern list experience or not?
Yeah, that's the right way of thinking that.
But the group does enable this site to be used across the Office 365 ecosystem.
Correct.
Now it's kind of open for everything, not just SharePoint. It can be, you can have a Teams connecting to the site and see your documents in here can show up in the Teams because you added those documents in here already.
Yeah.
So you get that nice integration by doing Groupify.
Very cool.
Cool. I think we are just running out of time. I'm going to flip on the slides, and we've been answering on the random questions as they move along, because now we can actually do this because everybody's sitting on the right room, on the same room. This is so weird. Once in a lifetime opportunity. But now, quickly, just pinpointing, like mentioned on this week's Thursdays, special interest group call has been cancelled. Paolo has agreed to set up a slide there where we will say essentially that this is cancelled. So if you pop by, you'll see that it's actually cancelled. We do apologize because everybody is actually, like mentioned, traveling home on Thursday from ESPC from Dublin. We simply do not have anybody, and they're either traveling home or they're on parental leave or whatever. So we can't actually run the special interest group call. No, but I think that's it for this November monthly community call. Thanks everybody for joining. Thanks for your contributions. Thanks for following up on our things. Please keep the feedback coming. Let us know if something isn't working. If something is working, obviously positive feedback is also nice. So please keep the feedback coming. And the communication channels open. And the video recording will be in YouTube channel within 24 hours. So thank you everybody for joining. See you later. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.